we wouldn't even be asking for like period days. Like women would be asking for ovulation days off because shit, if a shorty wants it that badly and she's come to work, you clearly know that her KPIs for that day are not related to the company but to getting company inside of her. Because god damn, like she'd be going for all the male colleagues. And that's saying that probably she's not lesbian because, if they were lesbians, they wouldn't be doing shit. Like the office will just be wet because...
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who may include jumping to conclusions to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to speak on women. Okay, is it really about women? I feel like there's a bit that's about women, but there's more to it than that. Okay, actually, this episode is about more than just women. It does revolve around relationships and mating a little bit, but I feel like the biggest common denominator in this is women. And honestly, it's not like I really have a problem with y'all. Like, y'all are just living your best lives for the most part. And I think that should be appreciated. But it may be having some unintended consequences for some of us, or at least quite a lot of us down the road, you guys included. And I do intend on speaking on that, but I'm hoping that it doesn't come off too badly. So should you like it, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential guest or topic that I should discuss, then the social media links are usually in the description. They rarely ever change. And if you really want to hear them and you feel a little bit lazy to go all the way to the description, then you can just listen at the end, because I always mention them at the end. But all in all, thank you so much for listening. I hope you listen all the way till the end of this episode, and you can get to listen to a couple more. But with pleasantries aside, I first want to get into the first area where I believe that I need to speak, not necessarily about the women, but about something that may actually make a lot of women pretty happy. Now, I'll admit, this isn't particularly new information, but for the women that didn't know, now you do, or at least now you will, because this is information that you guys might actually find to be very positive. Now, somewhere around mid-December, the High Court lifted the restrictions that were banning Marie Stopes from offering abortion services and a bunch of other things, and I feel like that is both great news and it might be a little bit bad news for some people, but you know what? I feel like it's mostly great news. Now, the story around it is actually pretty short. There wasn't too much that I read into it, because all that I read was the High Court lifted the restrictions barring Marie Stopes from offering abortion services, post-abortion care, and related public information. And apparently the reasoning was because they termed the directives by KFCB, the KMPDC, and DMS as unconstitutional. Now, all the abbreviations that I've mentioned there, I haven't bothered to go and check, because they're coming between you and the result of failed pullout game, okay? And it's not like their coming is anywhere near that pleasurable. At least, I wouldn't really know because I'm not really there. But still, the fact that these guys went against the provision of abortion services does seem particularly interesting, because even on medical grounds, I feel like having the option for abortion isn't such a bad idea. Now, I know that there's conservatives that feel some type of way about this, or, pro-life people that are like, oh, abortion is a crime, it's murder, blah, blah, blah. And I won't get into the whole pro-life, pro-choice debate. I feel like for the people that are pro-life, they have their reasons, and for the people that are pro-choice, they have their reasons. One is a little bit more progressive, the other one is a little bit more conservative. And there's pros and cons to each side, so whichever side you choose, that's entirely up to you. But I do like the fact that at least if you are pro-choice, you have the choice. It's not like you'll go undercover and try to act like you're not supposed to be doing that yet. That's the whole reason that you're there, and you're just going for consultation, yet you know exactly what it is that you want to do. Like, I feel like the whole cloak and mask thing that people have done for many years around this whole thing, especially whenever people are going to Marie Stopes, because I've never seen someone saying that they're just going to consult with a gynecologist at Marie Stopes. The moment you say you're going to Marie Stopes, we know what you're going for, okay? And the truth is, for most of us, we won't really judge you or even give a shit. It's like, oh, you got pregnant, you're gonna go get rid of it, alright, fine, cool. No worries about that. But now, the fact that these guys basically try to bar them from offering that service, I do feel is a little bit biased when you kind of think about it, because I believe at the end of the day, you should at least get to choose whether you want to have a kid, because there's a lot of kids that have been brought into this world by mistake, and they ended up either becoming a mistake or they ended up wishing that they weren't born, because their parents have basically been operating like they made a mistake this entire fucking time, in that they are either running away or they are screwing around as far as taking care of the kid is concerned. So having the option to make the choice, I think, is a particularly good thing. And also being a little bit more informed and getting the public information on this, or at least having the information be public, is a great thing, although that is just my opinion, and there's definitely some pro-life person that feels like this is bad. But either way, I'm going to leave it at that, although I'm not going to go to the main topic because I have something else, because I figured if I was talking about the animal kingdom last week, why not talk about it again? So your interesting fun fact from the animal world actually does put females in a slightly better position. Now, 2 episodes ago, or should I say an episode ago, I spoke about how female giraffes will usually have their pee tasted by male giraffes so that they can see if they are ovulating and if they're very fertile, so that they would make for the best mate, which would, influence certain mating options, as well as, the male giraffes knocking each other just to see who's got the strongest neck. Like, it was a particularly interesting thing that I was talking about. And I found another one, not necessarily about giraffes, but about a different animal that I feel like some people might find to be very, very interesting. Now, apparently, female lions are so energetic that they can mate up to 40 times a day and mate unaggressive if males can't keep up. Now, just think about it for a second. 40 times a day. 40. Like, some of us might not be able to get to 40 strokes if we tried in one round. But you're telling me that female lions, want 40 rounds in a day? Do you know how wild that shit is? And then the worst part about it is, like, they get pissed off and become aggressive if the males can't keep up. Like, imagine if lions were the drinking type and a male lion has some version of whiskey dick. Do you know how mad that shit would be? Like, the thought of it. Female lion is over there busy trying to get some. This guy can only manage 4 rounds, not 40. Why? Because he's whiskey dicked. Do you know how mad that thing would be? Like, imagine if human beings were like that, and whenever a woman was ovulating, she'd want to do it 40 times in a day. That shit would drain the hell out of us. And the thing is, like, draining our balls we're okay with. That one we don't have a problem, but when it comes to draining our energy, that's a different problem entirely, because, like, we want to go in and we want to show that we're the shit, but the moment a guy has zero energy to keep up, one, you acknowledge that the babe has, I want to say bested, but is basically like dominating you at some point, because, like, you just get to a level and you're like, honestly, like, this is too much. And frankly, there's not that many men that will ever admit to that, but imagine if most men admitted to it. Like, the kind of issues that would be there, like when men out here would be getting told, you guys need to be more vulnerable, and then they remember the last time they were vulnerable, it's because they were out of strength. Do you know how many guys would shut up about sexual experiences? That shit would be wild. But anyways, I've been making a lot of comments about this and I haven't even read the article, although I don't think the article says anything more than that. But either way, I'm just going to read it. So it says, and I quote, "Female lions are known for their extraordinary energy levels, especially during mating periods. When in heat, a lioness may mate up to 40 times a day, often with multiple partners, to increase the chances of successful fertilization. This intense frequency helps trigger ovulation. However, the constant demand can exhaust male lions, and if they become too tired or unresponsive, lionesses may grow aggressive, using bites or swats to encourage continued mating." Okay, now this even makes stuff more interesting, because I didn't even recognize that there was a part where it's like, with multiple partners. Bonnie Blue, is that you? Because, like, you think about it. Guys out here complain about women giving it up to every guy left and right. But now, imagine if a babe would have to do that with multiple guys. Guys would never be loyal to that shit. Like, I'm just thinking about it. Like, you have a shorty at work, you're like 10 guys, and she's like, yo, I am on heat today. Like, we wouldn't even be asking for like period days. Like, women would be asking for ovulation days off, because shit, if a shorty wants it that badly and she's come to work, you clearly know that her KPIs for that day are not related to the company, but to getting company inside of her. Because god damn, like, she'd be going for all the male colleagues. And that's saying that probably she's not lesbian, because, you know, if they were lesbians, they wouldn't be doing shit. Like, the office will just be wet because the both of them are just... Anyways. What I'm trying to say is, like, it would be very, very interesting to see such a thing happen. But I feel like if such a thing did actually happen to human beings, the whole dynamic that women hold the keys to sex would be flipped, and it would be the men holding the keys, because, well, when she's ovulating, she's gonna want to do it quite a bit. And for the most part, considering that, you know, they may get aggressive and decide to, you know, swat or bite to encourage, for those of us that may like that, you know, swatting my meat every so often or just playing with it might actually get me into the mood. But if I don't say yes, you don't get to sit on it. And that, as they say, is how consent works. And I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode, because I don't think I should be talking about sex too much like that. Now, moving things on, so I've spoken about the dating market and the issue with like trying to find a mate and how tough the dating market is. And I did talk about it quite a bit in 2025, you know, especially the back half of 2025 was busy talking about, you know, finding a mate, finding a partner, and how that might be an issue on either side. But now, when the Economist decided to do an IG reel regarding that, how they put it seemed a little bit more official, like a global issue, when they decided to call it a relationship recession. Now, the title of the clip is the world in a relationship recession? And considering that this is a 3-minute clip, it will be a little bit long, but I do feel like there's some points that were brought out that I do believe in, some that I don't believe in, but overall, it's supposed to talk about the whole singlehood issue that may be affecting many people. So I am going to let the clip play, then give my thoughts on it, because I do have a different set of thoughts, and I feel like this episode might actually end up turning out a little bit differently as opposed to the others. But all in all, let me let the clip play, then I can talk about it. So without further ado...
Here at The Economist, we think it's time to declare a new kind of recession, a relationship recession. We crunched the numbers, and there are at least 100 million more single people today than if coupling rates had stayed the same as they were in 2017. And in America, 50% of men and 41% of women aged 25 to 35 are not living with a partner, a share that's doubled in the past 50 years. This rising singlehood isn't a straightforwardly bad thing. There's less social pressure for women to get married, they can now earn more than they used to, and divorce is easier than in the past. All this means is that they no longer have to settle for an unhappy union, and that is a huge liberation. Today, many people, especially women, are happy to remain single, but surveys also suggest that most singles would rather be in a relationship. So why are these singles not mingling? One reason is that society has changed in ways that make large numbers of heterosexual men and women less compatible. As opportunities in work and education have improved for women, they no longer need a male partner to support them. Many men are struggling to adapt. In the OECD, a club of mostly rich countries, 51% of women aged 25 to 34 had a university degree in 2019, compared with just 39% of men. You might expect that this will create couples where the woman was better educated, but women still seem to have a preference for men with higher earning potential.
Hey.
One study in Germany found that educated women over 30 were more likely to stay single than partner with a less educated man, so men without college degrees struggled to attract partners. This new reality is making some men angry. Take South Korea, for example. A survey suggests that around half of young Korean men think they are discriminated against, and some 60% complain that feminism demeans them. Meanwhile, many young Asian women avoid marriage because they're expected to shoulder childcare and housework alone. They worry that the opportunity cost of marriage is too high, that it will harm their careers without making them happy. Another problem concerns dating apps. You might think they would make it easier to find a match, but they could be making people much pickier. Reporting in the Wall Street Journal suggests that most women on Bumble screen out all men who are less than 6 feet tall, which is about 85% of them. Some people are even turning to technology to find partners who will never reject them. A striking 7% of young singles say they would consider a robo-romance with an AI companion. As these love bots get more sophisticated, they could aggravate the decline of human relationships. Many people worry that a world with fewer couples and children will be sadder and more atomized. Yet some of these problems may be self-correcting. How men and women relate to each other has changed enormously in the past, and could do so again.
Okay. Particularly interesting thoughts and statistics that were put out there. Okay, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I thought the whole singlehood issue, or like the whole, too many people are single out here in these streets thing might have been subjective. It's kind of good that these guys came up with a more objective way of stating it, because an excess of 100 million people is wild. Granted, I do believe that the state of singleness and, the whole quote-unquote relationship recession is a bit subjective, not in that it's not happening, but I don't think we can accurately measure singlehood in some case, or at least in the way that people believe that it should be measured out. Because I believe that even though people are to try to measure it, I don't think we'd have a standardized way of trying to figure out how good or bad the singlehood issue might be. But with that said, and that nitpick aside, I personally believe that what was said in the video, or in the article, if you want to call it that, is not entirely wrong, but is highly subjective, or should I say mostly biased on one side of the gender scale as opposed to the other. Reason being, a lot of what has been said has been either pro-women, not very pro-single or pro-relationship, but very pro-women, and has sort of shown the positive benefits of the whole relationship recession on the women's side, while making it seem as though it's such a big problem on the men's side. And while I'm not here to dispute the statistics that these guys have, I feel like when you make some selections, especially with that sort of bias in mind, it can make it seem like men have this very big problem with it and women are thriving from the whole singlehood thing that's going on, or the relationship recession, and yet that's not entirely the case. Case in point, when she was talking about how men seem to be taking this very negatively, and she brings up South Korean men. This is the same South Korea that has the 4B movement for a reason. Now, they do say that they have a problem with feminism and how it's messing up families, which is true. The 4B movement is actually a thing, but South Korea's issues are very particular to South Korea, if I can put it like that. It's not like that's the same case in Europe, in like some of the other countries in the Middle East or Asia, or even Africa or the United States or the Americas even in general. So does this mean that men are very negative towards this? No, you can say that it's mainly South Korean men, but this article gives the impression that because South Korean men, or at least a large number of South Korean men, have a thing with feminism, that suddenly it's like men are having an issue with this entire thing, which isn't entirely true. And there's a multitude of reasons I can give for this, but let me even try and give some of the more public examples of why this could be bullshit. There's a lot of men now that are advising other men to not marry, and even in some extreme cases not to get into a relationship. A very good example of this is Andrew Kibe. Andrew Kibe makes it seem as though any woman that has been in the city and is of any adult age has slept with a good number of men. Now, whether that's true or false is entirely up to the woman and, like how she decides her body counts, but it doesn't entirely give the best impression of trying to get someone to be solid with and to settle down with. There's also other men that have exposed many issues with married couples whereby, for example, the woman gets a kid by another guy, and because they're married to this particular dude, that suddenly this guy now is supposed to take up the kid as the dad, and yet the guy doesn't know that the kid isn't his. As people would probably call it, paternity fraud. There's other issues of infidelity with married women. There's so many issues that come up that make it seem as though getting into a relationship might not be a great idea for people right now. And on top of that, everyone is busy talking about how shit the dating market is. So if anything, it's not like men in general are pro-relationship, or all of them are pro-relationship, and suddenly have a problem that there's a bunch of single women that are choosing to not settle down or be with a guy. Like that issue isn't just for the women anyways. There's a lot of guys that are very happy being single, and for them, like, that's where a lot of women are like, why can't he just settle down and be with someone? And yet, you can kind of see those issues spring up in the same way, just when you flip the genders. And so for the most part, I feel like a lot of what was said was very pro-women and seemed biased against men, if not biased towards women. So that's where probably my biggest issues were. But also, like, I feel like the whole issue with singlehood and the relationship recession, as they would call it, goes well beyond whatever's been mentioned, because there's a multitude of reasons why we have what you can call a relationship recession. Like, singlehood has a ton of reasons why it's happening in massive numbers right now. And the reasons, even though I was to try and generalize them, can be so vast and so many that I wouldn't be able to cover them all in a single episode. And the fact that there's some people that believe that there's some reasons for this and some reasons for that, and it can be that simplified, I think probably don't have the entire idea down. So, considering that it is something that I can't cover in a single episode, I'm going to try and cover it in about 2, okay? And I really tried to get as much of a general description of some of the issues, so it's not like I'm drilling it down to absolute specifics here, but I am going to try and bring up as many of the general reasons why a lot of people may decide to not get into a relationship, or why getting into a relationship may be hard for quite a number of people. Now, I have to admit that considering I'm a guy, that may seem like there's a bias towards the guys. Personally, I will try to make this as unbiased as possible, and I will try to be as truthful and as open about this entire issue as much as I can, from a couple of different angles, considering that, one, I've been talking about relationships for a little over 6 years. I may know a little bit about why it is we're having a singlehood issue right now. Also, as a guy that's currently single, as I'm recording this episode, maybe I've experienced some of it, and I've received a lot of shared experiences from a lot of people and observed some on my own. And also because I've had a look at some of the data, and I feel like what the Economist did cover may not have been the entire thing. And, also because why the fuck not? So anyways, so a couple of the reasons why I can say that we have a bunch of singlehood right now in 2026, I will start from the more society related reasons. And I think one of the main ones, if not the most direct ones, which was mentioned, is the lower pressure to get married, and it's easier to get divorced nowadays. Now, how easy it is to get divorced, I can't speak on, because a lot of that is very dependent on where you are. For us in Kenya, I'm not entirely sure if it's any easier or harder today than before to get a divorce, but I do know that it is easier to get separated and not have society judge you for it. And I say this because maybe 20 years ago, you could have heard of a situation where like two people who are married, and not too long after they were married, they sort of separated. Like, you would hear that 20 years ago and you'd be like, oh my goodness, that is so wild. How could they do this? How comes they didn't go through like the proper channels? Or what is it that he suddenly saw or she suddenly saw that made it hard for them to stay together? Like, you can throw in all of those questions, but I think over the past 20 years, there have been so many people getting separated that it has gotten a lot of people to the point where it kind of just seems normal, and the separation from a marriage kind of seems like very similar to a separation in a relationship, in that people can just agree to go like their separate ways, or one person just leaves the other and there's nothing much to it. So it is easier to do that. But the lower pressure to get married has been there for a while, and I feel like it's been there mainly because people have been taking a little bit longer to get married. I don't want to say every single year, but as the times have gone, people have been more comfortable with marrying later. 30, 40 years ago, you being a woman above the age of 30 not married seemed like it was definitely a problem. Like on a social level, it's like there was all of this pressure, and it's like, oh my goodness, you're 30 years old, how comes you haven't found someone, how comes you haven't settled down, how comes you're not married with kids? But nowadays, a woman who's 30 years old and not married is like par for the course. Like that's about as normal as it gets for a lot of women out here. For a lot of guys, they are going through like 30, sometimes even up to 40 and above, and they haven't gotten married or had kids, and they're not in any relationships, and they're okay. So there's that lowered pressure, which means that it is, a lot easier for them to kind of continue on and not worry about society implying some sort of thing or issue simply because they haven't married by a certain age. Also, women are making more money, which was mentioned before, and this is something that will affect a lot of the other reasons coming forward. Like, women are making more money, and as such, the idea of someone that is doing really well, making so much money, putting her life on hold because of a relationship and the guy wants to have kids does seem like a bit of an issue for some women as opposed to others. Also, there's a lot of women that may be doing so well on their own that they think about being with someone else and how that'll destabilize how good and peaceful their life is at that time, and they just don't really want to. Maybe they might say that they want to be with someone, but for the most part, it's like they're not even trying to get out into the dating market. So there's a certain comfort that they've gotten that they just don't want to mess with simply because they're busy out there looking for love. And, they can get a lot of that emotional satisfaction from friends, so, it kind of justifies what's there. Also, society has made some people more entitled than ever before, and I'll give you a couple examples of that just so that you can kind of understand. Like, for example, when a guy is making a lot of money, there's some of those guys that believe that they should be able to have a girlfriend and still fuck around, and the babe should be okay with it, and there's a lot of women that aren't comfortable with that. At the same time, there are women that basically believe that if you're going to be with them, you have to be able to cater for the bills, and they need to be treated like the princesses or the queens that they think they are. And with all of that, they require that the man should be completely and utterly faithful and almost worship the ground that she walks on. And, as a result of that, there's only so many guys that can do that. So there's a good chunk of them that end up with no guy. Now, such things are going to be some of the reasons, and I know I haven't covered all of them, which is why the next episode should cover a good chunk, if not all of the other reasons that I have, as far as me looking at it from the most general point of view is concerned. So for now, I'm just going to end it here, and I will give you the conclusion to this episode because I don't like ending episodes without a conclusion. So to conclude, I will say that there's more to this than the very simplistic reasons given in that article or video, and I intend on bringing more of them and, ensuring that a lot of those reasons get mentioned, because it's not as easy as there's 5 reasons or there's 1 reason or there's 2 reasons. There's many reasons why people are single out here, and we need to stop taking a biased view of it and try to mention them in the most objective way possible so that we can see if there's any issues that relate to us on an individual level, if there's a way that we can probably address them and maybe make some changes which can help us out in the dating market. Although, then again, maybe from what I've mentioned, a lot of it is bullshit, maybe it's right. Either way, I could be wrong, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.